Okay, I'll call this Plan Commission meeting to order for April 8th, 2019. Roll call, please.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Sue Springman. Here. Joel Zitzelberger.
Here.
Brad Zeman. Ryan Malish.
Here.
Tim Black. Chris Thomas.
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is minutes. Anybody like anything pulled or look for a motion? Motion by Susan Springman, second by Joe Zitzelberger. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Can everybody hear me back there? In the back right now? I'm going to do my best with my voice, okay? So if I'm not, just put your hand up if you can't hear me, okay? Thank you. Everybody outside, it's going to be nearly impossible for me to reach out there. So just know that. I'll do our best. Okay.
There are some speakers out there.
What's that?
I think there's some speakers out there.
They don't work, though. Can we get the speakers out there to work?
We're trying.
Okay. We'll try to get some speakers out there. Okay. 1 second, please. Okay. First item on our agenda for this evening. Actually, is there anybody who'd like to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda for this evening? Okay, everybody realize it's the nicest day of the year so far in Wisconsin, and you're all in the Village Hall at a Plan Commission meeting. I thank you all for being here, right off the bat. Okay, first item under new business, public hearing and discussion action on a request to amend the conditional use permit for Lone Girl Brewing, 114 West Main Street for an additional access doorway to the rooftop seating area. Kevin, are
First,
you?
we'd ask Kevin Amick to make a presentation, and then we can take some public comments, and then we can give you what our thoughts are, and then try and react to any public comments.
Okay, thank you. Kevin.
All right. First of all, thanks for everybody for showing up today. Much appreciated. And also want to take an opportunity to thank the Plan Commission regarding this meeting. I know there's a lot on the agenda. I'd like to just kind of appreciate your time to lay out some facts as far as I know them. With regard to what we're reviewing today, our original drawings for an opening from our event space to the rooftop called for a 10-foot by 10-foot glass panel garage door, which has been changed, and I believe everybody knows that, but I want to make sure that everybody knows that. We have also something I want to lay out there is we have no plans for additional seating or additional space on the exterior rooftop or the exterior lower level, anything like that, okay? For several reasons, the garage door idea was replaced with a set of double doors, which is like you see back here, double doors that are opening out onto the rooftop from the event space. The reasons for this change are, number one, upon review of our original plans with the police department concluded that a garage door that would always be open technically would constitute an extension of our rooftop space, which is quite literally not something we're looking to do. We're looking for access to and from. Number two, I did not like the all or nothing aspect of the garage door. We had a lot of internal discussion on it. We landed on the garage door. I was somewhat satisfied to come back to not having it. We all are familiar with Wisconsin weather, how unpredictable it can be. We'd be putting in a garage door, in my estimation, that would close 75% of the time anyway. So I'm kind of glad where we landed. To my knowledge, plans have been approved by the village engineer for a standard size double door opening to the rooftop again, which is exactly like you see when you walk through here. The resulting opening is 42 square feet, 7 feet tall by 6 feet wide. For aesthetic purposes, I would like to increase that opening to 8.5 feet tall by 7 feet wide. That's a total of 59.5 square feet. Again, my understanding, we are not asking the Plan Commission to vote on whether or not we can have door access. It is with regard to the size of that access. Depending on exterior conditions, as I kind of alluded to earlier, heat, cold, humidity, insects, etc., these doors may be propped open during events. Of course, we will have to adhere to our noise ordinances while these doors are propped open. The doors will be closed by 10 p.m. on weekdays or 11 p.m. on weekends in accordance with our existing conditional use permit to limit noise on the rooftop to a conversational level after that time. However, these doors will continue to be used as an ingress and egress until the rooftop closes at 11 p.m. weekdays and 12 a.m. on weekends. These doors are not part of our required emergency exit plan. We have other doors on the interior of the building that exit and satisfy that plan already. In anticipation that noise produced during operation of our rooftop will be discussed tonight, I would like to take a moment to point out that we're choosing to limit the number of dates on which we host live music on our own accord. Although live music events produce an average of $2,000 in additional revenue, we plan to continue to limit our booking of blues, country, or rock and roll style bands to a total of 12 dates, starting Memorial Day weekend and ending Labor Day weekend. Smaller solo artists and duos continue to be planned on Sunday afternoons from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock. Lone Girls received 6 noise complaints that I know of since we opened 3 years ago. In 2016, we received 2 noise complaints. One was at 9 a.m. in the morning when we were working out programming to fix a problem with our audio system, and it went to 100% on all levels, including the rooftop. Someone called from the Tribune and made a complaint, which I understand, it was fixed. The other in 2016 was an overabundance. I broadcast Brett Favre's Hall of Fame induction speech too loudly in August of 2016, so that was my fault. In 2018, we received 4 noise complaints, 3 of which came from the same night. One was from a band in June of 2018. The other was from a band in August of 2018. To mitigate these occurrences, we've added a line in our contract with live bands that includes written permission for us to control the volume. If they don't conform, there's a financial penalty that is assessed on them prior to payment. I met with Lieutenant Peterson from the Waunakee Police Department last week. We will be monitoring specific decibel levels at various locations while we host the live music. I regularly walk the perimeter to try to assess what is loud and what is not loud. Now that I have an ordinance that gives me a specific decibel level and I can purchase a meter that's the same as the equipment that the police offer, I can try to get ahead of any complaints that are coming. A permanent canopy will also be installed that's going to protect 800 square feet on the existing rooftop from inclement weather, and it's going to provide shade. I also believe that this canopy is going to mitigate some of the present noise that emanates from the rooftop. In conclusion, what we're asking the commission to review today, in my understanding, is if we can increase the doors on our event space to the existing rooftop to be 1.5 foot taller than you see there and 1 foot wider than you see there. We feel that this will help us promote and sell our new event space and keep it appealing and competitive with what is being offered in surrounding communities. Thank you again for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the public hearing first, Kevin, unless you have any comments first. Okay, so I'm gonna open up the public hearing. And I have some that didn't say they were supporting or against, and they didn't say what item they were, so if I'm gonna call your name, if you could respond, please. Patrick Funk,
Yes.
713 Kingston Way, number 5, Waunakee.
Yes.
You support
Support.
which item? This item?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just want to, we have several, that's why I need to make sure I have the right one. Then we have Brad Stotts, 903 Ganser Drive, in support.
Yes.
Same issue?
Yes.
Okay, in support. We have Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee. New business, she's opposed, and she'd like to speak.
I'd just like to know if there's gonna be a meeting with the neighbors in the central district about this, about the music and all. Will the music be moved to the inside, but you already answered that. Who do we call when the music is so loud that it can be heard in the 3rd block of 3rd Street? I really prefer to hear the cicadas over noise and music from your rooftop. So will there be a meeting with the neighbors?
I replied to an email earlier today that said, yes, we'd like to plan a meeting. I'll let you know later this week what time,
Okay.
what time we can meet. That sounds
Okay.
good.
Sure, that'd be great.
With regard to noise, I would prefer if you called us first. Again, now that we have knowledge of the specific decibel level, and we'll purchase the equipment to try to adhere to that, right? I think everybody wants to save a phone call to the police.
We tried calling last year and we were told you guys have amplified music rights. That's why we started calling the police.
And so we'll correct that, right? You should hear more than that. You should hear whether or not we think we're in compliance with the current noise ordinances. And then again, now that we know the specifics of it, we can do a better job staying within it.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Okay, then I have Ann Lewandowski, West 3rd Street, Lone Girl. She has written comments. Okay. I support Lone Girl's expansion with the following conditions. They have a meeting with the neighborhood to address concerns or issues the neighbors see with parking traffic noise. As a neighbor, I would welcome the opportunity to have a constructive discussion. A situation in front of the board and planning commission does not allow for a fruitful back and forth discussion. I think we all want to see the Abercrombie succeed. No one is saying they need to stop the construction they've started, just to speak with people who actually live downtown and know it's, not sure the. Quirks? Best. Quirks the best. It was handwritten, sorry. The amplified music poses a unique challenge in this location. As most of you know, there is a difference between the commercial district's maximum decibel requirements that the nearby residential areas have. See below. I would request that objective criteria be added to the conditional use permit language. The best solution I see is to add language that sets a specific threshold, number, percentage, of events that generate noise complaints that exceed the maximum decibel level that trigger a suspension of the conditional use permit for the rest of the season. In an ideal situation, this would allow the neighbors to call and alert Lone Girl when the noise exceeds capacity. I'm sure as responsible business owners and members of the community, the Abercrombies do not want to excessively disturb their neighbors in nearby residential zones, nor do they want to waste police time and effort on noise complaints. Setting clear expectations helps us all work together as neighbors and a community. We could further discuss a method of addressing noise issues at the neighborhood meeting requested. Okay, then there's a chart with, I don't know how to read it to you guys, so it's in record from there. Okay. Next, we have Ellen Schaff, Waunakee Chamber is in support, would like to speak.
Should I speak back here?
You can speak right there.
Oh, okay. This is a weird place to speak from, but I will. Good evening, my name is Ellen Schaff. I represent the businesses of the Waunakee Chamber of Commerce. That includes Lone Girl. Downtown is the core of Main Street. Some will say, what is Main Street, what constitutes Main Street, but let's be honest, throughout America, main streets are where citizens come together, they live, they work, and they engage with each other. The development of village crossings alone has strengthened the downtown and economic base of Waunakee, and that includes Lone Girl and the good work that they've done. They are an anchor tenant of that space, and the owners have made a tremendous investment of their time and money, and have committed to the success of and the interests of the people that are in the downtown. Successes of a vibrant Main Street serves as an economic engine that has been missing for many years in our downtown. For many, many years, I've seen that spot right across from the depot be empty. Spots across the way, empty. No, very little traffic or pedestrian walking, and that is so different nowadays, and it's so refreshing. And I really applaud Lone Girl, Village Crossings, Hovde Development for coming here and giving us a chance. And I believe that what they want to do is very reasonable. I think our other businesses would believe that. I mean, Kevin is standing here and he is answering your questions. He's willing to talk to people. That's just really shows a dedicated business person who is here to stay and who is invested in the community. So on behalf of the Waunakee Chamber and its businesses, we certainly support what Lone Girl would like to do and are glad to have them in our Main Street downtown area.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Amy Coonley, 705 Pleasant Valley Parkway in Waunakee. She fully supports the business to grow and give Waunakee and its community more opportunities. Would be a shame not to. Growth equals opportunity. Jeff Coonley, 705 Pleasant Valley Parkway, is in support. Laredo Douglas, did I say it right? If you're in here. 1105 Westminster Court, Waunakee, he supports. John Russell, 4360 Wren Court, supports. Carrie Esser, 509 Skyview Drive, supports. Mark Landgraf, doesn't have an address listed, supports the proposed project. Craig Detter, 1131 Ireland Drive, Waunakee, Wisconsin, supports. I support the door to the upstairs area. I've eaten there many times with my family. It's very nice. Abby Wilson, 316 East Main Street, in support. As a resident of Main Street, I see no problems with the expansion of Lone Girl. I would like to see the village assist Lone Girl in providing village signage, directing visitors to the brewing company to overflow parking at St. John's. The signage can be attached to the directional posts that guide visitors to the village, to the schools, and library. Phil Saddlebin? Sotbin? Okay, 6516 Harvest Moon Court is in support. Steve Jones, 6487 Harvest Moon Court, supports the amendment for Lone Girl. Eric Bussey, 6519 Harvest Moon Court, supports. Derek Wood, 1502 Blue Ridge Trail, supports. Can't wait to see a larger venue space and a great business. Kyle Kraft supports. He does not have an address. He's representing the Waunakee Chamber though. Kevin and Carrie have positively impacted the village and I support their expansion. Jerry Daniels, 815 North Meadowbrook Lane, Waunakee, Wisconsin, supports. Brad Duffrin, 619 Overlook, supports. Well-run establishment, has been leading in the community, Wisconsin, giving to various groups and organizations. Family atmosphere that is welcoming to all. Please allow for expansion and keep this place growing. Caleb Meske, 314 Santa Fe Trail, Waunakee, Wisconsin, supports. Chaz Richards, 1221 Dartmouth, supports. Julie Lafredo, 1105 Westminster Court, supports. Lone Girl has provided community support and allowing them to expand will only help our community. Rick Arndt, 1257 Hanover Trail, supports. Nick Hansen, 6477 Nature Valley Drive, Waunakee, Wisconsin, supports. Mike Kittle?
Yep, Kittle.
Okay. 5658 Cottontail Drive, supports. Linda Ashmore, 114 South Street, would like to speak.
Kevin got back to me this afternoon because I had requested a neighborhood meeting. Most of you that are saying you support, and I think it's a great business. I mean, it's nice that we have something there instead of vacant lot. But as a neighbor, it's loud. Some of the things you're saying I think are gonna help. I think when I counted up the number of public music events last year, it was over 20. And so when you get an event Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that really impacts the neighborhood because what I would try to do is like, okay, they're gonna have an event Friday night. If I knew about it, well, I'll go somewhere else. But I don't wanna go somewhere else every day of the weekend. So that's something to consider when we maybe talk about this. Because otherwise, the music is really the issue. It's the loudness. And so looking at the decibel meter, I think will really be helpful. Kind of remains to be seen, but obviously you're gonna be able to expand. And I'm really not clear, is this only about the doors or is this about the expansion inside? What is this about really tonight?
I can't answer yet. They can answer.
Okay.
So, you want to answer that? Okay, so I think and I think you may have touched on this in your discussions with the fire department.
Linda, was there anything else that you were going to say? Because when he answers, I want it to be move on.
Okay.
Anything else that you wanted to add to what you said?
Well, I'm not really sure we're addressing the right thing. Is it just the doors or was that the extra 100 seating space?
Okay, and then anything beyond that?
Yes, somebody mentioned that the overflow parking at St. John's, there is not an agreement for overflow parking at St. John's. And so, that is something that will impact the neighborhood if you have a lot of big events. And so, one of the things I saw that I liked is that you're running buses, like to Alpine Valley. And so, that might actually reduce some of the parking issues because people tend to carpool if they're gonna go on a bus. And so, there's some things that are good, some things that I think we need to talk about at the neighborhood meeting.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm done.
Okay, then Brian's going to answer your question, then go ahead.
Okay, so, and I think in your discussions with the fire department, if I heard you correctly, when you were initially talking about the garage door that would open up and down, I think the fire department had taken the position that would effectively be an expansion of the outdoor area because of the garage door.
Correct.
And that's, I think, how village staff was looking at this also when we had the garage door. So if you go back to 2014, November of 2014, a conditional use permit was issued to Lone Girl for outdoor eating and drinking area. When we had gotten the application and we saw that it was a garage door, our thought process was, well, the conditional use permit would need to be amended for the same reasons that the fire department had said. Now that it's a double door, I think when you go back to the staff memo, and so we are talking about the double doors. I think if we had initially been approached with just the double doors, that we wouldn't be here tonight. It wouldn't be a conditional use permit amendment. But I think, as Kevin explained in the staff memo, kind of out of an abundance of caution, Kevin even had approached Lone Girl and said, hey, since we've already noticed this for a public hearing based on, as an amendment to the CUP based on the garage door, we still think that maybe we should go through this process in light of the double doors. So it is about the double doors. What we're doing here, and I think this is advantageous to Lone Girl, is we used to have a practice before the Plan Commission of when we would issue conditional use permits, it would just be in the minutes of the meeting. So as part of your packet, if you looked at, you had the meeting minutes from 2014 that talked about the conditional use permit. Now we've started a practice of actually issuing an actual document. And so that's one of the things that I think village staff is going to recommend tonight that we do. So it is about the double doors. It may seem strange that we're here on the double doors, and it was because we started with the garage door, and that's how we ended up here. I hope that answers the question.
So it's a conditional use permit for the garage doors.
It's what it's going to be. What we have is it's going to be amended conditional use permit that's effectively going to take all of the conditions that were identified in the minutes, and we're going to put them in a written document, and then we have a new paragraph that deals with the double doors. So that's the only change to the conditional use permit is going to be relate to the doors.
And I misspoke, it wasn't the garage doors, and she changed it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mitchell Klug, 305 West Verleen Avenue is in support. Jerry Tierney, 6789 Wagner's Vineyard Trail in Sun Prairie is in support. Is there a Meister?
Meester.
Meester.
Slap your handwriting.
Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, then it was right. 1103
Richard Court.
Richard Court. He's in support. Tony Labraco?
Yes.
5550 Gaudi?
Galloway.
Galloway Drive. Support. Crystal Herbrand, 212 West Main Street in support. Jim Scott, 1605 Dover Drive in support. Would like to speak.
I'm Jim Scott, 1605 Dover Drive here in Waunakee. My wife and I have been residents of Waunakee for the past 21 years. Over those 21 years, we, as our kids have grown, we've gotten more and more entrenched within the community. And what Kevin and his family have done with Lone Girl is they have welcomed in different athletic groups, different fundraising groups for, whether it's Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, what have you, Girl Scouts, and never bats an eye at it. And so now I sit on a board for some athletic departments at the VW, and we have approached Kevin about having things there, and he has never once batted an eye at it. To add more seating, to have a different avenue for us to bring more money into the community would be a great thing. And I would just hope that you guys, where you are tasked with a tough decision, please don't forget that we're here about doors and not noise. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dave Esser, 509 Skyview Drive is here in support. Derek Taylor, he doesn't have an address, but he's with Global One Solutions. He's here in support. Paul, I'm going to murder this. I know it. Paulicel? Palachek. Okay. C-E-K at the end?
Yep.
Okay. K was an L for me. All right, 713 Kingston Way, number 5 is here in support. Christina Statley. She doesn't have an address. She is here in support. Allow additional access doorway to rooftop seating area. She's in support of it. Jeremiah Logman, 111 Meadow Oak Trail. She's here in support, or I'm sorry, he's here in support. As a 17-year-old resident, I feel that there are no current venues that I would want to host a wedding, etc. for me. Lone Girl's event space will be optimal and would fill all the hotel rooms as well as for my event. Anybody that I missed? Jerry, did you have one?
I didn't fill one out. I have something based on what was said here.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Jerry Ashmore, 114 South Street. I appreciate Kevin's willingness to work with neighbors and his concern over noise levels and such. I have to say, though, I have to bring this up. I taught physics for 25 years at Madison College. I understand the physics of sound. I can tell you, for example, when you're measuring decibels, how you measure it and where the number comes from. That's the actual decibel level. I have real concerns with measuring the decibel level at the property perimeter when the sound is being generated on the top of a tall first story, probably something like 16 feet off the ground, and you're standing sort of around the corner from where the sound's being generated on a property border with a sound meter. Sound doesn't travel in right angles like that very effectively at all, so naturally you're going to get a fairly low decibel level standing, holding the meter in your hand 4 feet off the ground at the property line, compared to the sound that's being generated and sent out at a higher level. One of the issues we have in our neighborhood is that the sound seems to skip over the first floor buildings on South Street very effectively and come right into our neighborhood because it's generated in that rooftop area. If they had the same sound being generated on a ground level outside area like the other ground level outside areas we have in town, we would have much, much less sound problems in the neighborhood. So I just want to bring that up as something. It sounds like it's an objective measure. I see it being quite problematic going forward, saying that, oh, the level's low enough, there's not a problem here, when in fact the sound we have in the neighborhood is much higher than it would be if that was the actual sound level coming out towards us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Anybody out there? Good?
2 or 3 in the back.
2 or 3 in the back row? Okay, let's go left to right, if you guys are all right with that.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
You can stand and say your name and address.
My name is William Davis. I live at 6480 Harvest Moon Court, and I support the door situation. I've only lived here for about 3 months, and this is my first time here, so I didn't realize the sign in. So, but I support it.
Okay, thank you.
Steve Soden. I live in the north side of Madison, but work at Madison Country Day School in River Road in Waunakee. I would concur with that gentleman there in terms of the support that we've received from Lone Girl, as well as everything with my daughters playing sports in Waunakee, just the amount of support that they receive. So I definitely support the doors.
Thank you.
And Brett Bauer in support as well.
Brett, where do you live? What's your address?
812 Victor Lane.
Thank you. Okay, so we have some more now.
Brian Anderson, 6172 County Road I support.
Okay.
Dana McKenzie, 1425 Shenandoah Drive, in support. Didn't know there was a sign up for it.
Okay.
Same, Brandon Volley, 310 North Madison Street, in support.
Thank you.
Kevin Piet, 1604 Waunakee at Bellwood. I support as well. All the things that were echoed are certainly I support.
Thank you.
Scott Phillips, 1102 Richard Court, support.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, right there.
I didn't get to, Carrie Abercrombie, 6495 Harvest Moon Court, support.
Right. Sorry, I didn't see you back there. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing at this point. Brian?
So let me just, and we can obviously answer any questions that you might have. Before you, like I mentioned before, we have a written amended conditional use permit. And what this document mirrors effectively the language or the information that's already in your packet. So what it notes is that there was a conditional use permit issued to allow outdoor eating and drinking on the property back on November 24th, 2014. What we're here about is the double door issues. It's not the garage door issue, it's the double door issues as we sit here tonight. So what this document says is that, you know, if I guess the village staff recommendation is that we do approve the amended conditional use permit. Now, there are 7 conditions to the conditional use permit. They're on page 2 of the document. The first 6 are the conditions that were identified in the minutes to the additional conditional use permit that was issued back in November of 2014. So there's nothing new or different about those. The only new condition, and this is actually where I have a question for the applicant. Tracy, can you go to page 13? So the information that's in our packet, there was a reference earlier in the presentation about the size of the double doors. Is that the size of the double doors that you're looking to get approved, or is it something larger than that?
It's smaller than that, as a matter of fact.
Oh, it's
If you flip
smaller?
to another slide, it'll show a permanent side light, again, reference, as an example over there, that is the size that we're looking at.
So is that page 14? Okay. So the one change that we would have to the conditional use permit now is that we would want to make clear that it says, you know, for the new condition, as part of the applicant's plan, see recital B, the double doors and windows installed by the applicant may open the converted space to the existing outdoor patio. So that's the condition that we're talking about. And what I would just want to work in there is this would be the exhibit that would be identified, the page 14 of your packet. But that is essentially the only change to the existing conditional use permit would be to add this section G that would say, as part of the applicant's plan, the double door and windows installed by the applicant may open the converted space to the existing outdoor patio, and we would insert a reference to the document here on page 14 of your packet.
Okay. Commission members, any questions for Brian or Kevin at this time?
Brian, can you clarify at all? It appears certainly that we're dealing with the doors.
Yes.
Can we do anything based on music or noise, or is that out
Well,
of our hands at this point?
I wouldn't say that it's out of your hands. I would say, though, that those types of conditions are already in the existing conditional use permit, so we're carrying them over.
Okay.
I think, it would be, you know, the way that the existing conditional use permit was approved, if you get a certain number of noise complaints that you feel are inappropriate, you already have the right to deal with that.
Susan?
Does the public know all of these?
Well, I can read off what the,
I think it might be useful.
so these are the conditions. It wasn't in the, oh, yeah, it was in those conditions were in the packet.
But not everybody sees the packet.
You know, on page, okay, on just to make people aware, on page 10, but I can, yeah, right there. So these are the initial conditions that were placed on the CUP. Do you want me to read them, or? I can.
I think it's fine. People can read in here, I'm assuming. If not,
And this is also, we don't say anything about meeting with the neighborhood, but the assumption is the applicant's going to move. That's not a condition of this, but
We didn't add it as a condition. You could, but I think he's already volunteered and
yes,
set up a
yes,
time.
so we're assuming.
and I'm happy to join you for a meeting if you'd like with the neighbors too.
Okay.
So, I will point out to Mr. Ashmore's comments, I think the higher the noise is, the more it does go further, and I would just use our current football stadium. I get a great play-by-play of the whole game from my residence, which is half the village away. And so depending on where the wind is coming, so it's just something that we want to consider as we do this. I think that how we measure it, we can probably, as we meet with the neighbors, we can probably come up with a good solution for that to make sure our decibel levels are where we want them to be for everyone. That's, other than that, I think that, the establishment's been great for our community. It's well recognized, not only in our community, but other communities. I hear often how great of an establishment it is out in other communities I'm meeting with, not only from the people, but from other leaders in other communities. So, I'm in support, but I'll take any other comments that people have. Brian, anything, or Chris?
I'm in support as well.
Would you like to make a motion
Sure.
to that effect?
Motion to approve the CUP as presented.
Yeah, amended CUP as presented.
Okay, so motion by Chris Thomas. Do we have a second?
Second.
I think Susan beat you, so a second from Susan Springman. Any other comments? I have one. Noise-wise, one other thing. When the doors are open, wherever we have music inside for weddings, the direction of where that DJ or band is pointing upstairs inside, should probably try to be away from the doors as opposed to directly at the doors. I think that's gonna extenuate that noise out. So if that can be done with yours, I'd appreciate it if we look at that seriously. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for Chris.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick 5-minute recess while we have a changeover here. At 6:39. Tracy, 6:39. Okay, we're coming back into open session. It is 6:41, 42, somewhere right in there. And we are moving on to our conceptual review. Festival Foods to be located in the Kilkenny Farms West Commercial Center at the southwest corner of Woodland Drive and County Highway Q. Kevin or Brian, do you want to?
We're not taking any action tonight, Chris. This is just to get feedback from the Plan Commission as they, at a future board meeting, will be presenting their general development plan. And after the general development plan is considered, we'll be bringing it back here for consideration for final action on the SIP.
Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Bauman. I'm Senior Vice President, General Counsel for Festival Foods. I can't believe everyone left and didn't want to hear a presentation. 75-degree evening here, 2 days before it's supposed to snow. I'd first like to thank the Plan Commission and the village staff for working with us so collaboratively, not only over the past few weeks when we made our initial submission on March 15th, but really going back to the several months before that. We acknowledge that we came in a bit later, but with this collaboration, a lot of hard work on the part of our development partner and ourselves, we're pretty thrilled here with what we believe is a real dynamite project, a gateway project, if you will, for the village of Waunakee, and a project that, as you know, is seeking zero TIF support. What I'd like to do initially here tonight is just give a brief overview of the general changes that we made to our submission, the March 15th submission, based on the feedback that we got from village planning staff, and just give you an update of where we are and what we, some of the changes and tweaks that we've made to this project that frankly have us even more excited than we were a few weeks ago. The first of which is we got some feedback from the village on the need to comply with the village ordinance, which requires a unique architectural design. We recognized in these discussions that Waunakee really values its character and uniqueness of the village. So we were, when we got a better understanding of that, village staff provided us some sample buildings, things like that, and we made some tweaks to our design, which Aaron Aspenson will share with you and which are shown here on these boards. We think it looks great. It ties into some other landmark buildings here in the village, and we're pleased to say that we can fully comply with that ordinance. Secondly, we really sought to minimize the environmental impacts of our project. One of those things that we did was we sought to reduce the impervious surface, basically parking. Our ratio is slightly over 5 per 1,000. We wanted to avoid the traditional sea of blacktop that you often see with a big box store. So we sought to do that. We also split our stormwater basins up into 2 smaller basins versus 1 larger basin. We think this is a more efficient, more effective way to manage the stormwater that's generated. We're actually going to be able to pull in, I believe, some water from other sites as well. I think aesthetically it's much more pleasing for an overall design. And the third was we really focused on our comprehensive landscape plan. We're going to use some strategic berming on the back of the building along the new parkway, and then also along woodland, along with trees, to really provide as much barrier protection and kind of shield that from any of the residential areas as well. I'd like to point out that based on the feedback from the village staff, we fully comply with the village's comprehensive plan. We've put an emphasis on pedestrian and bike access, making sure that that's going to be a walkable site and able for the neighborhood to utilize without use of an automobile. We also, in terms of traffic planning impact, tried to utilize the existing infrastructure along with some new public infrastructure to most effectively manage that traffic flow. One thing that we'd like to point out is common sense, I think, would dictate that having the store located on the western side of Q, I think will help avoid some of the traffic congestion that could take place, especially at drop-off and pickup times with the school, especially with morning, with truck deliveries and things like that. We also made some reductions in the size and scope of our signage in order to comply with the village ordinances as well. We didn't have to seek a variance on that. And I think finally, just to point out that we're going to do all this and we're still going to deliver a store that opens in 2020. So that's kind of a general overview of what we've done with the feedback from village staff, feedback that we really appreciate, a lot of collaboration, a lot of hard work. And I would now turn it over to Aaron Asmussen, who's going to just talk about a bit about the architectural design and what we've tried to incorporate there.
All right, thank you, Brian. Good evening. My name is Aaron Aspenson. I'm the store planning director for Festival Foods, and I want to thank you for letting me get up in front of you today to discuss our new store and all the architecture that goes with it. So, first, a little background. If you could go to the next slide. All right, so a little background about the design of our store. We worked hand in hand with the village and staff and used the town of Westport commercial property design guidelines as our guide when designing our building. So we were provided a handful of buildings, as Brian mentioned, in Waunakee that the village appreciates the architecture of the buildings. So these buildings meet certain criteria, such as they exhibit a good use of variety and contemporary materials. They embrace the surrounding landscape, and they reflect an open and welcoming 24-hour day operation by using a mix of standard and clear story windows and skylights for daylighting. So with that, the buildings we looked at for inspiration are up here. The first one being SSM Dean Health. The second one being the development where Animart is located. First Choice Dental is the one here on the left, obviously, and then Waunakee Community Bank, which that's the building I especially liked. So without further ado, if you go to the next slide, here's our proposed store. So overall, the main objective was to bring the festival brand to the village, but to also be respectful of Waunakee's brand by merging the two together. We recognize this is a gateway project to the village, and this design is totally unique to Waunakee. It satisfies Municipal Code 133-19 for large retail buildings and also incorporates many design elements of the buildings that I just mentioned. So this specific view here is a view from Highway Q at the south entrance of our store. So this is on Highway Q, looking at it from an angle going north into Waunakee. Next slide. This is a closer look at the southeast side of the building. You'll see a lot of extra windows and decorative elements on this view. We obviously did that because this is the south-facing view, and we recognize that people traveling from the south coming north into Waunakee will see this side of the building first. So we added a whole bunch of windows on the side, so at night it looks bright and open. And you'll notice we're using a mix of longboard siding, and that is similar to the siding that you'll see on the First Choice Dental building. And then we've also incorporated a lot of oversized soffits and canopies and a lot of the gooseneck lighting that you see there, which you can see that on other buildings throughout Waunakee as well. Next slide. Actually, can you go back one more? One other call out, we strategically placed bike racks around the store as well. And we've We also incorporate charge point electric vehicle charging stations in all of our stores, so Waunakee will also have those. And then we also received feedback, as Brian mentioned, from the staff about the amount of signage that we had on our building when we first submitted it. So we reduced the amount of signage to be within the municipal code, and we are not seeking a variance on that. Next slide. And let's see.
Let me go back here.
Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Here, this is the northwest side of the building. So this is going to be facing the intersection of Q and Woodland. And in this one, we've incorporated a lot of clear story windows, as you can see up there with the canopies. And then we've also added the decorative gooseneck lighting on this side of the building. And then we also did a lot of stone massing around it to try to break up the elements a little bit. Next slide. This is the side in the back of the building, specifically the view from the southwest side along Peaceful Valley Parkway. We added a lot of spandrel glass windows back here with canopies over top of them, and then broke up the massing with a lot of rectangular metal panels. And then we tried to increase the landscaping on this side as well, because we realize that it's open to the residential behind us. We will have a lot of berming back here as well to try to break it up. Next slide. This is a view at night of our store, and you can see the use of tasteful accent lighting across the front. And I think this is a cool look. It just looks open and bright, and I kind of wish I would have done a view from the other side for our folks traveling north in Waunakee, because we have a lot more windows over there. But all that to say, we have a lot of windows, and it looks open and bright. Next slide. Elevation views here. Not a ton to touch on with these ones that I haven't already, but let's see here. Yeah, so really just calling out all the materials that we have up there. So obviously if you want to see those more in depth, we have those also listed down here on this board in case anyone's wants further detail on that. So with that, I want to thank you for allowing me to present this, and we're really proud of this design. We think that it's going to enhance the brand of Waunakee, and it's really nice to merge our brands together. In fact, as we went through this process with the village, we realized, wow, this is a really cool design, maybe something that we can carry forth in other stores because we liked it so much. So I want to say thank you for pushing us to up our game in that respect.
Just don't copy it, so they're still unique.
We won't do that. So next are, does anyone have any questions for us before I sit down, or? Yeah, actually, Grant Dukoch, our civil engineer, will talk about the site next. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. We can hold some questions, so after I give a brief overview on the site here. So first off, introduction, Grant Dukoch with Excel Engineering. Just want to thank you for your time tonight. Excel Engineering, myself, is representing Festival Foods on the development and the project, so just wanted to give a brief introduction of myself, and then also just walk through some of the basics on the site, walk you through that. Don't want to take up too much time with specifics, but just highlighting some of the key items here. So first off, one of the key attributes working with Festival is that we really work together on projects. This isn't our first project together, but we're looking for an integrated development design for the project that's specific to the community and specific to each layout. It's just not another box store that we're putting together, putting the site plan together. We're trying to pull what those natural elements are around the site, around the community, and make that specific for each project and each design. So as I kick off here, there are a lot of thoughts gone back and forth between Festival and Excel on how can we provide the best layout that fits in the community, and how are we actually providing the best product, not just trying to get up another store. So with that, from a zoning perspective, this is a planned unit development, and with that, we're respecting, all underlying zoning districts, but it is a PUD. So, excuse me, just want to touch on that. If we could get the next slide, please.
Is there more on this one? Okay.
So this layout's just an overall colored landscape site plan, just to show everybody how it's tying into the community and what we're proposing here. I just wanted to touch on a few of the key points here, and with that, there's connection points that we're proposing. There's 4 connection points, one off of Woodland, 2 off of Lone Silo Drive, and 1 off of Peaceful Valley Parkway. I'll get into a little bit more of the operations of auto and truck traffic and what we're doing with that, but that's how we've laid this out strategically, and working with village staff at those locations so that they're acceptable and the maneuvers are acceptable. We do have sidewalk connections, sidewalk and bike path connections, 1 off of Lone Silo Drive and 1 off of Woodland. So it's really bringing that entire circular network to the development so that anybody via pedestrian travel, if that's walking or on a bike, that they can easily access the front of the store. And we're strategically locating those alongside the main drives coming into the building, so that we can cross up into the front of the store without having to go through the main parking field. So that's the reason why we have those located where they're at, and it's minimal traffic areas that they need to cross to get up into the actual storefront. That brings them up into that welcoming front store that Aaron touched on. With our layout, we just have our general, a grocery store development. We need to have parking. Most people do come with automobiles if you're shopping for a larger amount of groceries. So we do have our parking field up front. We are trying to break that up with islands to the maximum extent practical, given some snow plowing and cart corrals, some logical items that have to happen from a maintenance perspective. We do have our loading areas on the rear of the building and the west of the building, and that's really where we're trying to focus a lot of our berming and dense vegetation. So we're really breaking up that area and keeping it shielded from any views to the west. That's what we have. We do have an optimal slope on our parking lot, 2 to 5% for shopping carts. So pedestrians are feeling safe getting their groceries in and out from their vehicles. So we have strategically put those slopes as a good slope for drainage, yet not an overslope, so that your shopping carts don't become runaway and the customers are feeling comfortable pushing those in and out. Can we get the next slide, please? So this is a dimension site plan, and I just want to touch on the auto traffic flow and what we're anticipating for some of our deliveries and truck traffic. The main entrance, or the main 2 entrances, I believe, will be on Woodland Drive, and then opposite of that on Lone Silo Drive, as you can see. We have a right in, right out only on Woodland Drive, just to promote safe access at that point, working with staff, and we do need to work on updating some traffic studies just to ensure that's adequate. But we want to make sure and respect the intersection with County Q and Woodland from a traffic standpoint. So we've put in a right in, right out, which allows all the customers exiting to come back onto Highway Q and Woodland and then navigate throughout the village. Customers entering, we would anticipate most of them would turn into Lone Silo Drive, and then they could either make an immediate right into the front bay of the parking, navigate through and park, or they could come and turn in the driveway immediately in front of the store to bring them in both of those directions. So those are the main automobile entrance and exit locations that we're anticipating. And as you can see on the west side of the site by the truck loading area, we're going to be directing all truck traffic at that point. So all deliveries coming into the building, all vendors will be coming in at that location. And the vendors can range from a small delivery van or a straight truck to a large actual tractor trailer semi. So that entrance is accommodating all that traffic, and we do have loading docks, again strategically located, recessed, and shielded with berming for that. We are going to promote any truck that can to exit back onto that same location to keep them away from the front of the store from a safety perspective, so we're not mixing those deliveries with the automobile traffic. But unfortunately, the large WB 67, which is the large tractor trailer that you know is the 18-wheeler, that has to come out and navigate to the north and then east, given that large turning radius, to prevent the sea of pavement back there. We need to navigate around the back of the store, head east, and then that would exit onto Woodland. So we're providing an area of pavers or colored concrete for that trailer to swing on as we pull out, so that we can have a safe exit. Very similar to a roundabout where they color the concrete on the inside of it. 99% of the traffic can make that turn out, but we're going to provide that raised curb, mountable curb, and then either concrete or paver, something depicting that area differently for that trailer to swing out. As you can see, that's the hatched area on the right side, or the east side of the entrance onto Woodland. So that's the anticipated traffic flow for the development and the property. Snow plowing, and I know it comes up every winter, usually in the summer. People in Wisconsin start to forget about it, but this is a winter to remember, and snow is obviously a concern. So we've strategically laid out the main parking field that the snow could be plowed to the north into a proposed wet detention basin. That's one reason why we don't have any more islands. We already have cart corrals to work with, so we're trying to push that snow from south to north, and it's a large area to plow, so that goes with some of the behind the scenes, how we're pointing this out. And I know that there's more snow in the forecast, unfortunately, but it's just what we have to do in Wisconsin. Around the perimeter, the rear of the site, we're just gonna use the green space that's available, not have one mass snow storage area, but just plow it out around some of the perimeter grassed areas around that area. So I just wanted to touch on that. Cart corrals, we've worked with Festival again to lay out our cart corrals so that all the customers don't have to travel a long distance to put their carts back. Again, it's all about the experience. You know, Festival wants their customers to be committed to the store. They want to have that good shopping experience, so we're laying those out in those locations. You the next slide, please. This is a grading plan. Just want to touch real quickly on stormwater management. I know Brian mentioned the mixed basins that we have proposed here. We are designed to meet all local, county, and state stormwater ordinances. So that's stormwater quality, quantity, infiltration, thermal control, and oil and grease. We're using that, utilizing 5 different stormwater facilities on site to do that. We have 2 biofiltration basins on the south side, as about a third of the site existing site drains to the south and then heads towards County Highway Q. So we're treating that water that's going to Highway Q. The remaining 2/3 of the site will head north, which we have two wet ponds proposed and then a grassed infiltration area. We will be taking some of the public improvements to the stormwater facility in the northwest corner as well, and those stormwater ponds will be used for water quality and quantity treatment and then discharged into the grassed infiltration area for infiltration thermal control. So that's what we're doing with the site. We're maintaining existing drainage patterns and trying to utilize, you know, a multitude of basins around the facility so that we give it more of a green, environmentally friendly feel rather than one just mass stormwater management facility on site. Last slide, please. Again, just going back to the color site plan, just a few things that we wanted to touch on. We are strategically locating, and I know I've used that term, but I feel like we use it over and over again when we're discussing and trying to go back and forth on how we design our projects. We've put the building elevation at an elevation about 8 feet lower than County Highway Q, and we've taken our parking field, and I don't want to say completely level because we slope it to inlets so that we provide appropriate drainage, but we're more or less recessing it out to the east and out to Highway Q. So Highway Q is higher than the parking field. So when you're looking at the building, you're going to look over a lot of those cars in the first, let's say, half of the parking lot, and then you're going to see the main attraction, which is the building. So instead of sloping right up the easy way, right up to Highway Q and not have any grade transitions, we're recessing that parking in so that when you're looking out over it, you're hiding a lot of those cars and vehicles and seeing the building and the main attraction. So we're doing that. We're working with the developer to put the building as topography heads from east to west in this area to step topography down. We do have a lot of topographic changes on here, so we've really took in all of those elements and stepped this from east to west. So that's just one point I wanted to touch on. All of our grades on site are obviously ADA compliant, acceptable with that. We do have some steeper drives to the north and then a retaining wall and grade falls off to the northwest to match into existing grade. We touched on landscaping. There are some dense landscape buffers proposed. I don't really need to highlight on that, but you can see, you know, a lot of the dense, heavy tree plantings on the west side to shield those areas. And lastly, did you have the retaining wall sign?
Yeah, click one more time.
We have one more? Okay, oh, perfect, okay. One last point I just wanted to touch on with our site. We were able to use the northeast corner of our site, and if anybody has been past Highway Q in Woodland, it's a steep elevation grade up from the road up onto the site. So we're going to be cutting a lot of that grade so we can actually make this development happen. But we are going to use some of that grade and put a retaining wall in it and put a festival food sign on it, which meets the ordinance, and then use the same type of stone veneer product to match into the building, again, just to anchor the store, make it a part of the community rather than, you know, just your status quo box store, grocery store. So we've really used some key points here to try to really pull this together into the community. And just want to, you know, last point here from a site, just overall integration into the community with pedestrian, automobile connections, some of these elements that I touched on, that Brian and Aaron touched on. You know, we've really been pulling this together to be able to provide the architecture, the site plan, and the entire project together. So, Brian, do you have anything else to add?
Do you have any questions for Grant or anybody?
Chris, any questions? Joe?
I'm curious about the right in, right out up on Woodland. My experience has been when that sort of thing exists, some people will still make a left in, and, is there any thought potentially moving that, I guess, to the left here maybe, and, putting in some sort of divider on Woodland to be able to prevent that?
Sure. Thank you. Good question. We can take a look at that. It's something that, yes, it's, traffic provisions and barriers are implemented, but somebody's always gonna try to cut that corner and take the shortest route possible. So we can take a look at that with staff. We can possibly take a look at dedicating more of a right turn lane to block off any of that traffic to turn left into it. It's, we've looked at a lot of options. We'd really prefer full access at this point, but given the amount of real estate and close proximity to Highway Q, it's gonna be difficult to get any dedicated left turn lanes in there. And, yeah, we can definitely take a look at that to try to channelize that more. We could put a larger island in. We can look at some things, so yes.
I also wanted to say I appreciate your comments about dropping all of this down, because when I first saw it and saw all the parking against Highway Q, I thought, that's not exactly the view that we want. And in fact, if you look at the comprehensive plan, it's in there that there's not supposed to be all this parking. Once we drop it down like that and they're looking over it, that makes it much more palatable.
Susan?
I think you've done a good job. I like the building. I love the fact that there's gonna be light and we don't have these blank walls. I think you did a good job with the site plan. I originally didn't like the parking on Q either, but as I started to think about it, even on the other side of the street, when you've got residential behind, it does make more sense to put it on the highway versus back where the residential is, so I think it does make sense.
Right?
Building wise, I think the building looks nice. I kind of agree with some that's already been mentioned. I think it's a good use of balancing sort of what's, back a house, I guess, on what's really a four-sided site. So I get that, the delicateness of trying to balance that. I think it's done pretty well. I just jotted a couple of notes that, I don't know, kind of you, kind of maybe us, about just kind of how traffic control, again, the right in, right out at Sausalito. I don't know if it's necessarily your guys' problem. Maybe it's put it in, see if it really is a problem. Same sentiment that the right in, right out is a suggestion for a lot of people, not a rule. So just, I don't know, for us to keep an eye on long term. Down the road, that intersection at Holiday, just knowing Holiday's starting to become a decent north-south connection. I don't know if it's come up about need to signalize, or is it going that far? I mean, that's years down the road, but I'm just curious if that had ever come up.
We'll want a TIA to go along with this, and really, it's really that intersection that I'm concerned about.
Okay.
And how it could be as simple as a four-way stop.
Okay. And then the last question, again, maybe it's more on our side, but ties back to some of the elevation changes. On the very northwest corner, you talked about dropping off and using a retaining wall to get down a little bit lower. I'm curious, do you happen to know where that pond elevation might expect to be in relation to the concrete creek to the north of Woodland? We've got a pretty good size, and if you continue further north in just an aerial view, there's a big green swath there with a little concrete creek going through it that I know on a bad day of rain gets a pretty healthy dose of water. So I'm curious if you happen to know where that elevation is in relation.
Without looking at exact grades, I know we're going to be about at that elevation. Possibly the pond would be a little lower than that elevation. As you head east up of Woodland, the grade does increase, at a pretty steep rate. I'd say 5 to 8%. So we got the stormwater pond about as low as we can, matching into the adjacent roadways, proposed public roadways to Woodland and to the building. So it's that puzzle piece of stepping down in all those elements. And I would say, to answer your question, we're at or below. Very comfortable.
And where that pipe goes, the little concrete creek that comes running down the backside.
Just a touch. So from an overall stormwater standpoint, if that pond were to be at capacity, 100-year plus storm, It's going to be all ponded in the infiltration area. It's all gonna become one large ponded area. That would then overtop into woodland and then head west.
I guess you know where I was getting at. We're not
Yeah.
backflowing into the neighborhood in the 105-year storm.
We're heading
scenario.
west with our overflow route, which would maintain existing, and then that would actually loop back to the southwest. There's a drainage way back through the agricultural field, or a lower area, which would be the overtopping point. So that's where the water would go. It would not head north.
Thanks. That's all I got.
Could you demonstrate just by pointing up there, where's your truck traffic gonna come off of Q?
Sure, absolutely. So off of Q, we would expect it to come down on Peaceful Valley Parkway, where it loops back in, down here, 800 feet to the south. The truck traffic would come in around the rear and then make its way into the back of the building. At this point, there would be nothing against the truck traffic down Woodland to come in back this way, and that's something that we can work out. If there's an issue coming one way or another, we can work through that. We do have this entrance design, so that truck traffic could come from either way along Peaceful Valley Parkway. We'd come in the back of the building, and then we'd back down into the loading docks on the west side of the building.
Okay, and in your notes that you gave us, you expect 25 to 30 vendor deliveries a day, except for Wednesdays and Saturdays, where you'll be around 10 to 20. 30 to 40% are semi-trucks. Where are they coming from? Typically, your vendors, are they gonna be coming from the interstate? Are they gonna be coming from Madison? Where are they gonna be coming in? Because whatever we do over here, if it's the interstate, it's gonna have a ripple effect on the rest of the community on the other side of town. So I'm just curious where your vendors are coming from typically.
Yeah, I would say the majority of them are coming from Super Value, our wholesaler, distribution centers, so could be Green Bay or Minneapolis. But then there's also, vendors coming from all different directions throughout Wisconsin.
Yep, I'm just trying to take into account, because we're looking at potentially 2, and what ramifications that has on the other side of the community, because I'm assuming where that's gonna come from, down our main street. And then the other question is, are the roads gonna be built to handle that semi-truck traffic right now, as we put that in? And it's not, if they do come down Woodland, which hopefully they won't, it says Woodlow on Drive on there, I'm not sure where that is, but Woodland.
That's incorrect,
Yep.
I apologize.
I just wanna make sure that the roads are constructed properly to handle the construction traffic that's coming down there. I understand where you're coming from as far as where the truck traffic is, I like that. I agree with the others on Sausalito. I don't think Sausalito is gonna be a massive entrance into this. If I'm coming up from Q, I'm probably gonna come down and turn on Lone Silo and come in right in. I'm not probably gonna go down to Woodland and then come in left. I don't see that. If I'm on Holiday, which is the main thoroughfare, I don't see turning left to go up to Woodland and come in. I'm just gonna come in the back way. That's just being here for my whole life. I see that as how I would do that. So we can still work through those details, obviously, but I think that the one that's coming off of Sausalito, the closer we get to Q with any entrance, I think is challenging, more so.
And that's, just to touch on your point there, is we've looped it back and curved it. We prefer more of a linear approach to the front of the store, but playing with grade and then also trying to provide that throat length away from Q and align with Sausalito is how we originated that location there. So it's just, we've pushed it back as far as we can. We can't go back any further because Woodland keeps dropping off in elevation. We can't get up to the front of the store at that point, so we're blending it,
And then lastly, I'm assuming that, we're not talking about, we're talking about potentially having 2 stores. So I have to make sure that Lone Silo Drive, I'm assuming that's gonna be across the street from Sarah Lane, across there. Is that correct, Kevin?
They'll have to be as a condition of approval.
Where you're lining those 2 sides up there. And we just need to make sure we have that engineered properly for, depending on which way you're going. If that is the choice. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? We're not doing any, all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I just
Jason.
wanted to add one thing. First, a note of compliment on the design of the building. You really responded to our feedback, and I liked it a lot. About the islands, the landscape islands in the parking lot, The ordinance does require that every 12 spots, there then be a break, the landscape island. And so, if you want to not have that, it'll have to be specially approved, through the process to have it, or you need to get those islands in there. So I just wanted, I don't think we talked about that at the staff meeting, so I wanted to flag that for you.
No, and in addition to that, we flagged it, but we haven't taken it to the level of detail as we have with the building, but the increase of 1.5 point requirements in terms of the tree count regarding to. So, as you think about this, I agree, the Q edge, that's where you need to think about some additional, or really understand what you're putting there from a plant material standpoint. But the other thought I had as I was looking at your parking lot, I know snow removal is always a concern, but when I look at your layout, I see a number of, I don't know what to call them, shopping cart corrals.
Correct, yep.
You could easily combine planting islands in those so that you have your snow lanes, and then, because you're not going to plow through the shopping cart corrals either. So I think there's a way to get more trees in there that accommodate our code and also makes maintenance not a nightmare.
I don't think you're gonna get any debate about having maintenance be easier, but from their side, on that. I'm in agreement. I think the building you've done very nicely in blending it to the Waunakee community, with what's up and around there specifically. What else are we completing tonight? Anything else, or is this just their feedback?
I think it's just feedback to them based on the presentation that they've made.
Anybody else? Anything? So we're not taking any action though tonight?
No action.
Okay.
And I would just add one more thing, in that we may take elements from this in the future, but this will be unique to Waunakee. This is a one and only, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have public hearing and discuss an action on a request from Kilkenny Farms West LLC to approve a general development plan for Kilkenny Farms West Commercial Center at the southwest corner of Woodland Drive and County Highway Q.
Who's presenting, Jerry?
Oh, we can just, Jerry and I are available to answer questions. I don't know if you want to put the GDP map up there, Tracy?
Working on it.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. We've got a 3-lot parcel, I guess. It'll be a CSM, that's the next item on the agenda that goes with this. There's room for an outlet for stormwater. The store that was just presented is on the northerlymost lot, and you've just heard those guys explain that. The southerlymost lot is allocated and set aside in the plan for a potential convenience store with car wash and pumps, and that is in the intersection area with Peaceful Valley and Q, I mean. And then lot 2 is mixed use basically at this point, the way we described it in our planning document. We do not have a specific user for that at this particular point in time. And we'll have to come in obviously with a SIP at a future date for that. But we've got the grocery that was just presented, and we've got a convenience store in the south end. And I think the conditions, other than, I don't know if you wanted to discuss the street naming or whatever, that was the one thing that I thought was interesting. I think most of the rest of the conditions are things that we can work with staff on, and I saw that the recommendation was that it be approved subject to the usual condition that it be approved by the village engineer and village attorney, and I think we're fine with that if there's any details that need to be worked out. I don't know, Jerry, did you have any issue, but the street name I thought was an interesting question. Having been to meetings out here for I don't know how many years discussing the future Peaceful Valley Parkway and extending and all that, we tried to follow what we thought was kind of the village's objective with that, and I see there were comments in the staff reports that say it should be called Holiday Drive. Okay. So I don't know if you really want, that seems to be more confusing to me, but I do not live here every day and have to drive on it, so I guess that's something maybe that should be discussed.
Okay. Anything else?
We can answer any other questions that you have, Jerry.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I just want to say too, that absolutely our roads were built to very, very
we put at least 20 inches around those.
It's really
If you know anything about
emergency.
Don Terry building roads,
Hold on, I mean, any other comments?
they'll be well done.
And any questions, just that.
Okay. Anything from you guys before I open the public hearing? Okay, then I'm going to open the public hearing. I have one person who's submitted, Dan O'Callahan, 222 West Washington Avenue, Madison, part of Forward Development Group. Neither support nor oppose, just has a few questions and concerns. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. Dan O'Callahan on behalf of Forward Development Group. As Chris mentioned, I'm neither in support nor opposition to the project. I represent the developer of the mixed-use project across the street, obviously. And developers make it a general rule not to go to public meetings and oppose other developers' projects. It's bad karma, but we do have some concerns that we wanted to share with you. So, and they relate primarily to traffic, and I think a little bit of that was discussed during the informational presentation on the festival project. So the traffic, a couple of comments about the water main and the looping, and then some stormwater concerns. And I won't go into detail on any of those. And I don't even know if that's appropriate at this point, considering we're here to talk about the general development plan. But we just wanted to be transparent with our concerns, realizing that we would have development projects across the street from one another. And again, I want to make it very clear that we're not in opposition in any way to development. In fact, there are a lot of synergies that can happen when you have retail developments across the street from one another. So, but we do want to make sure that the development that takes place here on the west side of the highway doesn't have any negative or unintended impacts on the development that we've proposed. So that's a plan that we proposed to the village in late 2017, early 2018. And so with regard to access on Q in particular, when this site was annexed to the village later in the spring of 2018, we had already proposed to have some access on Q. And so when the village board approved the annexation of this property, it was written into the annexation agreement that this development site on the west, its access onto Q would depend on a number of factors, including what was happening with the development on the east side of the highway. And I'm not sure that there's a conflict there between the uses that have been proposed and the traffic that they will generate. But we do think that that deserves a closer look. We were required to prepare a full traffic impact analysis, which we shared with the village for our project. So we're interested to see what the traffic impact analysis for the west side looks like, just to make sure that there aren't any conflicts with the turn movements if both the developments have access onto Q. Also have some concerns with what the retail activity on this site, on the west side, what that activity will do to the level of service at the existing signal at Woodland Crest and Q. Some other more detailed concerns like that. So again, not objections. We just like to make sure that those issues are thoroughly vetted and decisions made accordingly. Kind of in the same vein with the water main connections. I think the preliminary plans that we've seen for this development show a water main connection coming across from our development on Sarah Lane. There weren't a lot of details there, so we weren't sure of how all of that would work. We're wondering about a looping connection down a Peaceful Valley. We think that there would be some benefit there in terms of maintaining pressure and flow for fire protection. And of course, we want to make sure, very self-serving here, right? We want to make sure that the service to our development on the east side it maintains a high level of service from the water main standpoint. And then lastly, just some concerns about the stormwater, how that's being handled on the site. Realizing that we've got some discharge that comes from the west to the east. And so when we were initially developing our site, we got some comments from staff about some existing conditions on the west side of the highway that were sort of substandard and needed to be addressed or created problems as the watershed moved from west to east. We just want to make sure that all of those concerns are properly accounted for in the stormwater plan for this site. We haven't seen the details. Maybe your professional staff has gone through there already. But again, at the earliest opportunity, we just wanted to raise these concerns as you're looking at this plan.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we had one other comment that committee members have a copy of it from Robert McPherson. I'm going to read it into record, or should I have Tracy read it?
It's up to you. I mean, We don't even have to read it into the record if you don't want to. It can just be made a part of the public record. We have no obligation to read it, but if you want to read it, you can.
I read others that sent in tonight, so I'm gonna do the same and stay consistent. So this is from Robert McPherson, 1703 Alexandria Court. I speak tonight in specific he writes tonight, actually, in specific opposition to the proposed GDP for Kilkenny Farms West Commercial Center at the corner of Woodland Drive and County Highway Q. This opposition is specifically because the developer seeking to improve this lot with a grocery store collectively known as the Tierney's already were given land improvements in Tax Incremental Finance District 6 to build what is defined in the Kilkenny Farms Commons GDP as grocery retail commercial property. As a taxpayer and resident of the village, I'm concerned that the village's government is not fulfilling their fiduciary duty in this decision. This concern is based on whether the village knowingly grants the petitioner developer's request without considering the developer has not yet developed land that has already received infrastructure improvement, which was financed by the village through issued bonds. Additionally, while the space allowed for building size in Kilkenny Farms Commons GDP is smaller than the proposed building in the Kilkenny Farms West Commercial Center, it was for the same purpose, a grocery store. Regardless of the petitioner's repeated statement that they are not asking for TIF assistance for this specific project, they already received it to deliver a similar project about 1/4 of a mile away from the proposed site. This site has not yet achieved the development which was allotted for in the assumptions about the TIF district's added value. If TIF District 6 did not exist in its current form, as a citizen, I would be fully supportive of the developer's efforts to develop the proposed area. However, that is not the case here. I urge the Plan Commission to act with consideration of the village's fiduciary duty and to not consider this project in a vacuum, considering existing outstanding uncompleted development on lands the village has a taxpayer vested interest in already. Okay.
Mr. President, I don't know if I had my 3 minutes. There was just one other point that I forgot to mention, if I could.
If you would, come back with number 4, because you asked for on number 4, so you can maybe.
No, 4's not.
No, he can't?
4's not a public hearing.
Oh, I can't. Yes, sir.
Would it be possible if I could respond to a couple of those points?
You have 3 minutes to say what you'd like to say. It's a public hearing.
TID 6 is the best performing TIF district in the village. And the reason there's not a grocery store on the grocery store lot is because it's too small. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone else?
Maria Pat, 1000 Wexford Drive. I'm real close to that corner from where I've been living for quite some time. As I was listening, I too wondered about the roadbed situation. We travel back and forth to Reedsburg quite frequently, and within the last 5 years, there's been a double roundabout put in there. 5 years, and all of that semi-traffic that goes down 33 into Reedsburg and out has ripped the roads to shreds. And this was a newly built road in an area where semi-traffic is very heavy and always has been. And they didn't think it through. And so today they're throwing asphalt into the holes. It's a big issue, and it's not going to be just there. It's going to be wherever those semis access the village, where they have never accessed before. And that might even be M coming in through Q in Middleton. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Having any comments to start with?
Yeah,
or develop?
Jason's gonna go through his memo just to give you some feedback.
Yeah, so I'm
Jason's
just
okay.
gonna flag a few things from my review. In terms of land use, it's mostly consistent with the comprehensive plan as presented to us. The only inconsistency is that outlet, or the lot 2 that doesn't have any buildings shown on it here. The GDP describes possible multifamily use, and the comprehensive plan indicates that the portion of the lot, roughly the half of the lot that's along Q, should be a non-residential use, should be a commercial use. And so my recommendation that be refined to specify that call it the front part of the lot be a commercial use, not a residential. The GDP doesn't show sidewalks along Woodland or Q. Your ordinance says you put sidewalks everywhere. As a planner, I advise you put sidewalks everywhere, and so recommending that there be sidewalks shown and planned in the GDP. Landscaping, we've been talking all along with this collection of teams here about the interface between the grocery store
and the residential on the other side. And I'm recommending that the GDP actually show the landscaping buffer that Festival has been putting into their plans, but I'd like to see that in this phase of the approvals as well. Regarding the street name issue, more than 2/3 of the street is a north-south street. Whenever you take a street and you turn it from an east-west to a north-south, you create a navigation challenge. And so the question is, all right, we've got that challenge, what do we pick? And my recommendation, and I think most of staff agrees with this, is that you pick the dominant portion of that and decide that your transition, where you're gonna have one on one side of the street and one on the other, ends up on Q instead of on Woodland. It's gonna be somewhere. And so my recommendation was that you put that on Q and make it Holiday down to Q. The last item is that the GDP talks about the, if approved as written, the GDP would not require any more conditional use permits in the approval process. And I highlighted the fact that the big box retail ordinance that you've had on the books for 20+ years requires that its terms be met through a CUP. And so recommending that the GDP be revised to indicate that that ordinance will be complied with rather than avoided, which is kind of how it's written right now.
Okay. Can you clarify that?
It's not a PUD, it's a conditional use, I'm confused.
No, it's gonna be, this would be a PUD. It would be, the general development plan would be modified so that to have the, the square footage, I think it's over 50,000 square feet, would require a conditional use permit. So, which is exactly what we've required on the east side of the street for Hy-Vee. It would be the same, and I think if I can piggyback what Jason was saying, I mean, one of the other changes that staff is proposing is, if you look at that picture up there, so where Festival is going to be located, that the permitted use on that lot would be for a grocery store. Where the convenience store would be located on Lot 3, the permitted use there would be a convenience store with all of the necessary fueling stations, etc. I think from a staff level, what we want to do is we want to be consistent with whatever we've required of Forward Development Group or of Hy-Vee on the east side of the road. We want to also require that of Kilkenny Farms West and of Festival, knowing that we had a discussion at the village board level at its last meeting, and there's definitely the possibility that we could end up with 2 grocery stores right now. And that's, as I've said as the village attorney at the village board meetings, I think that's within the board's discretion, and there's been certainly board members who voiced the opinion that we should. But, we should not stand in the way of 2 grocery stores. If 2 grocery stores want to go there, then we should allow that to happen. And so I give you that background to let you know that when you look at staff's comments regarding the general development plan, they are similar to comments that we would have provided to Hy-Vee and to Forward on the east side, because again, we want to treat each side of the street the same and fairly.
Okay. I'll start with you this time, Brian. Any comments or questions for anyone?
No.
Susan?
Sorry.
No, not at this point.
Joe?
I'm concerned, I guess, with Lone Silo Lane and the fact that matching up with Sarah Lane on the other side. When I look at this, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. In my head, because we've got, with the Hy-Vee proposal, the convenience store is part of that, so I would think that is further south over on the east side. Is that?
I haven't put them side by side, but
Okay.
in the end, we're not gonna, they have to match up.
So the goal is that they will match
Yeah,
up?
we can't have misaligned
Okay.
intersections.
Okay.
What about the trail along Q? I think Jason's raised that. I don't think initially we ever thought about having a trail along Q, but as planners point out, as communities grow, those pedestrian access become more important. There is a gap as you go. When we built the other section of Q going north towards the school, we kept just the trail on the one side, so that, you know, through the school property, there's really not it wouldn't connect to go north currently. But it certainly could, eventually could cross the parkway, or it could go up to the Woodland Drive, down towards the new school.
I've got maybe a follow-up question to my
Yeah.
no comment earlier. I guess I was saying that thinking that, having read through everything that Jason kind of outlined in here, after I read it, I didn't really find anything that I disagreed with. So yeah, when it comes to like pedestrian down the east side there, I like that. I'd like to see that. I'd like to encourage, again, more of that. So when I'm looking at the recommended motion here,
It does incorporate all of that, yes.
It incorporates
Yep.
that. So, okay. All right. So that's, I wanted to make sure that that qualified. That's what we're talking about here when we're saying staff comments.
It is.
So, all right.
Chris?
It was addressed, I was gonna address the sidewalk issue as well, but it's being addressed, so.
1 second, Jerry. I agree with the sidewalks. I would like to see, and I would assume if a grocery store is there, is that they're gonna wanna see a connection down to that school, for kids to have an easy way and access path up to the store, as opposed to not having access, that they'd have to cross the street, which is a busy street. So we haven't discussed this in any detail, but I would assume that we'd wanna have something going down there, if at all possible. Second, we had a resident that wrote in, and this is gonna echo what Jerry said a little bit, but for the public, it's important for you to hear this. So I asked Todd Taves from Ehlers and Associates and Renee, our finance director, to look at our TIF, number 6. And right now, the annual increment for 2019 was $941,431. Our debt service payment on that is $622,479. It's currently planned to close in 2028, and that TIF was started in 2016, I believe.
Very recent.
2016. So we're within 12 years of closing. That is before we add potentially our Boston store, and we're going to be talking about Steve Brown Apartments tonight as well. So those will also be added in.
Boston Pizza.
Boston. What did I call it? What did I call it?
Boston store.
Boston Market, Boston store? Sorry, not Boston store. Thank you for correcting me, whoever caught me there. So that TIF is performing very, very well, and I would assume that regardless of how we decide on the stores, that the rest of that is going to fill in fairly substantially and quickly as well. But just to give people the understanding that that TIF is performing extremely well, and will close quite early in this,
That
potentially.
significant increment generated from that TIF has been used to pay for the road improvements to County Highway Q.
Correct. The Highway Q improvements were all paid through that, yes, the majority of
The
it.
internal development,
So, okay.
which takes trust.
I don't know. That's
Not on that. Okay, so
Could I address a couple of
I actually can't, because it's, well,
it's closed. I mean,
it's closed, and
I think the TIF thing's been addressed pretty well.
we always allow our,
Nothing to do with that.
hold on a sec, we always allow.
Applicants are
applicants to
allowed, because
speak
lots
when
of
people
times what
make
you
that.
guys want to do is you want to ask them
So-
questions, so.
Correct, so, go ahead, Jerry.
So, I just want to address a few things. To do with the sidewalk, mainly. What was a couple of the other, was there a couple other issues?
Street, you mean?
I'm just gonna leave that one. What was the next one?
Land use, commercial.
CUP.
The CUP is fine. The land use,
Street name.
no, the street name's fine. The land use, I guess, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's fine, okay?
Landscaping?
What was the issue with the landscaping?
Showing the buffer behind the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
We're just
Well,
supposed to show it.
put it-
But that's a zone, not a planting plan. Just a zone saying it'll be a buffer screen.
Sure, but
If
I'm
they're doing
confident
the
that
planting plan and the SIP.
between their team and our collective team together, we're gonna plant a lot of trees, and we'll deal with that at whenever anybody wants to. What I did wanna talk about is the sidewalk. And if you go from here to the next intersection, there is I believe a 10-foot wide blacktop paved trail that was installed and paid for by TID 6 as part of the original project plan. And I guess it would have been good information, because at that time it wouldn't have probably taken much to also include a sidewalk on this side of that. The reason I am pretty opposed to doing that now is because, one, you have a beautiful trail over here, and all of this is more of a commercial area. This road will have sidewalks on both sides, and I believe you have designed for a bigger one on one side.
Correct, yep.
Yep, so the full boat on one side and a 5-foot sidewalk on the other. Yeah, there's a lot of connectivity, and I guess I can't see why someone would want to walk along Highway 2, and that's how I feel about this sidewalk. So I would be glad to take any questions or comments.
Okay. Comments from,
I've never, ever heard a community say, I wish we hadn't put sidewalk in there. I've heard many communities say, I wish we had gotten sidewalk in there when development occurred. You've got a plan for a whole residential neighborhood behind here, possibly higher density residential on the site in the middle of here. People want to walk by the most direct route they can. I think you want that flexibility of having a sidewalk on this side of Q as well.
to Jason's point, I'll just say, if people do cross Peaceful Valley Parkway, they're probably not gonna wanna go around to the back of the store, they're gonna wanna come right down the front. It's just that's just naturally where they're gonna wanna go. I also realize that where we're sitting today, in this commercial area, which isn't residential, there was no sidewalks on one side for a long time, and it was a horrible thing for people having to cross back and forth, because there'd be a strip of sidewalk across the street. Similar to this is what I see from a commercial standpoint. I don't know who your convenience store is gonna be at, I have my suspicions, but they're gonna have a lot of walk-in traffic too, I would guess.
And I will admit, I almost feel bad saying this, because I feel like we've had a lot of sidewalk discussion in the past couple of meetings. This is one that I you know, and we do try to build trails, sidewalks, and everything wherever it makes sense. I just wanted to voice my feeling that I don't think this one is necessary, but.
Okay, so what are we deciding?
Right now, it's part of the comment, so if you want to take it out, you'd have to take it out.
It's in.
It's in. It's a requirement, it's a condition of approval that the sidewalks be included.
For the GDP.
It's in the GDP. It has to be there, that's part of it.
And keep in mind that this, because of where we're located in the joint planning area, this is going to go to joint plan commission tomorrow night, and then ultimately goes to the village board. Just so you're aware. So when it talks about recommend, I mean, this is a recommending body. The actual, the formal recommendation though, to the village board is from the joint planning commission. So I would say that it is relevant, you know, what your position is on the sidewalks, but I also wanted to make you aware of the fact that it is going to joint planning commission too.
So I guess that's something we need to discuss here quick then. I mean, I shared my feelings about the sidewalk, what I think should be in there. Brian, what's your?
I agree with the comments from the get-go. I'd like to see the sidewalks in there, whether it's concrete sidewalk or asphalt pathway, whatever it is, a pedestrian walkway. I'd like to see.
Susan?
Yeah, either or, I wonder if a path, more of a, versus a sidewalk, more of a path for riding bikes or something, get people off that road.
Agreed. Joe?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, similar to the path that's already along Peaceful Valley and.
I followed the bicycles last night, it was scary.
I do like them included, yes.
Okay, so as part of our motion, then that would be part of it?
No, you don't have to, it's already included, it's already included.
And then the
within
other
this
thing
one.
we need to consider is the name of the street. And we've had a recommendation from
Yeah, the
staff.
recommendation is cut it off at Q. I think the fire department concurred with that.
Does the post office have a say in this at all?
Nope.
No? Okay.
I think it's police and fire that are the most
Emergency
important.
is the most important.
Okay.
So if we can go back to the roads meeting up again, for a moment, if we pass this, and if this GDP,
Well, the roads are actually probably more in line with the next agenda item, which is the certified survey map.
okay.
But what Kevin's saying is correct. I mean, it's gonna be a
Sure.
condition of approval that they have to meet up.
okay. I just don't want to approve something now that
Yep.
ties us in later.
Okay. So it sounds like we're going with staff's recommendation on that.
Mhm.
We just need a motion.
Make the motion to recommend approval of the GDP to the village board with the condition that all staff comments are resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer and village attorney.
Motion by Brian Malich. Second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have discuss and take action on certified survey map for Cook County Farms West Commercial Center at the southwest corner of Woodland Drive and County Highway Q.
Yeah, as introduction, this is the lot creations for the proposed GDP. And our staff comments were pretty limited. You got any, Jason? I don't think we had any, Brian? Other than, you know, the most important is we need to verify that both of these roadways intersect and function.
So I'm eyeballing it right now in a very crude graphic way, just layering pieces on top of each other, and my eyeballing of it suggests that the lone silo here on the west side is further north than on the east side. But, so, I mean, we can...
Yeah, maybe they don't have to align perfectly, but they have to function together.
Okay. What's that? Jerry, go ahead.
I just want to address that issue. I'm curious if it would be fair to say if, let's say it's 10 feet apart, center line to center line, would we move ours 5 feet and they move theirs 5 feet, or do we move the full 10 feet?
Question. Fair question.
That's it.
The traffic impact, right?
Brian, you're gonna have to advise us on it. I mean,
Well-
what is the proper way to handle
Oh, well, I mean, I was telling Kevin, I mean, normally, I think the rule is, or I think rule's too strong, but, you know, the proposal that we received on the east side of the street was the first one in the door and has already received recommended approval from the Plan Commission and from the Joint Plan Commission, and that includes the plat that shows the location of the road. So I'm, you know, part of it is see how you know, if there's a way that they could work together. I mean, we're always open to listening to, you know, property owners that work together, and then if they come forward to something that works from the village's standpoint, we're on board with that. But the preliminary and final plats on the east side of the road have already received recommended approval from the Plan Commission and Joint Plan Commission.
Did they have the usual condition, though, that they're subject to approval of the village engineer and the village attorney?
They do.
Yes, well, that means that you guys can still work it out.
It does, but that doesn't change the general rule that I identified, Mike, which is usually the first one in the door is the one that kind of identifies where the road's gonna be located. I didn't say there's a law, but you guys would be arguing the exact same thing that I just said if the roles were reversed.
I'm just saying, there's a condition there you can use.
I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah. And again, look, I'm an attorney. I don't got a dog in the fight on this one. I'm gonna listen to Kevin and Kent and whatever they have to say. But I agree with the points that Joe has been making to this point, is it's gotta make sense.
Joe just expounded on it. Okay, so
I think the recommended motion, though, is still applicable.
okay. So unless anybody has any comments, we need. Jason, you have something? No?
Structure fire on 4th Street.
Do you think that we need to add recommended approval of the village board subject to final review and approval by? So what Kevin and I were talking about is I'm looking at page 57 of your packet on the certified survey map, and the recommended approval, we would add recommended approval to village board subject to final review and approval by village attorney and village engineer to address the issue that Mr. Lawton had identified. If there is a way that it can be addressed between the two property owners, we have the flexibility, as long as it works for the village, for that to happen.
Yeah, that's fine, it's fair for both sides then. Put that in there.
Well, there's an interest in both sides to make sure people can get in and out of both sides.
Yep.
Yep, okay, so, could you read that one more time for everybody?
So, recommend approval of the certified survey map to the village board, subject to, well, I want to take the same language we had in the last motion. So I'm just. With the condition that all staff comments are resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer and village attorney.
Okay, do we have that motion from someone?
Does that still include?
Yeah, that includes everything.
The initial one you had specified.
Well, that includes every, that includes the road issue that we're talking about, yeah.
So moved.
Motion by Joe Zitzelberger. Do we have a second? Second by Susan Springman. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have a public hearing and discussion action on request by the Laurel Apartment Complex, Kilkenny Commons, for a conditional use permit to exceed the maximum height limit for portions of the gabled roof.
This first action item is for the conditional use only, not the site plan. We'll be discussing that at a later agenda item. So with that, I would recommend that you take your public hearing. Staff is fully supportive and has a proposed language with a recommendation.
Okay, then I will open the public hearing. I don't have anyone that's asked to speak. Anybody else? Okay, then I'll close the public hearing.
So you, similar to the conditional use permit that we addressed with Longer earlier tonight, you have in front of you a conditional use permit documents. Essentially what this would do is we've received submittals from the applicant, and Jason's memo really, gets to the heart of this, that talks about the fact that we do have portions of the roof that exceed the 45-foot height restriction as we define building heights in our zoning code. Nothing goes higher than the 55 feet. If you all recall, in 2018, we did make some amendments to our zoning code that identified specific standards that would apply if we had a structure that was, greater than the, in this case, 45-foot height restriction, and what would apply. And so if you look at the conditions that we've identified, basically we're saying that the roofs the roofs, and again, unlike the Hovde project where we had some the community room was, portions of the community room were higher than the 45 feet. Here we only have the roof. And so one of the conditions is that the roof can exceed the 45 feet but shall not exceed the 55 feet. And then we have language in here that talks about the setback would apply. Going back to the standards that we identified for height restrictions, in our zoning code we have 4 standards. If you look at the document that I provided to you, we're only applying two of them. 2 of the standards really don't apply here because, again, it's only a section of the roof that's higher than 45 feet. We don't actually have like an accessory use that was greater than that. So that's why, and we have a footnote that deals with that issue. So we're here to answer any questions, but we would recommend approval of the conditional use permit as presented.
Committee members, any questions?
There's a piece in the building height where we talk about, basically you take the total height of the roof and it's half of that. The maximum heights that we're dealing with here are actual maximum heights, right? It's not building height plus half of the roof.
It's maximum average height.
So we define building height in a certain way within our code when we have these, and I'm going to speak and then Jason's going to correct me, these gabled or these certain pitched roofs.
Yep.
And so we are applying that definition within our code and to their proposal. And still, it's still only the roofs that are higher when you look at the definition of building height, higher than the 45 feet.
Okay.
It's the average of height, isn't it?
It's the average.
Yeah, it's the average. That's what we're measuring. When we measure,
which is in the code, just to be clear.
It's from the code. It's the average height of the building.
So the actual highest point is going to be higher than the 52.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. wanted to make sure I was clear.
Yep.
Having gone out and looked at the site this afternoon, the way it slopes down, I think it makes good sense.
Okay. Are you making a motion?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Chris, any other comments?
Nope.
Susan?
No.
I think it makes sense too, so.
Okay, I'll move to approve the fee for the height above 45 feet, not to exceed 52.
Motion by Joe Zitzelberger,
Second.
second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have discuss and take action on site implement.
Wait, can I just go back? I just want, you guys approved this document, the conditional use permit
Correct.
that was placed in front of you. I just want to make sure that that's, okay.
Okay. Then we have discuss and take action on site plan specific implementation plans for the Laurel Apartment Complex, Kilkenny Condo.
This was tabled at our last meeting, and there's a couple of things that you told us to look at with the developer. One being the pedestrian access around the building, and then having Ed work with some of the aesthetics in terms of the appearance from the road.
My turn?
Your turn.
My turn. Thanks, everybody. My name's Dan Seeley. I am with Steve Brown Apartments. Thanks for the time tonight. Thanks for sticking with us. I feel bad, like there's nobody here anymore. But I guess we'll do this for you guys, because you're really the important ones anyway. As Kevin mentioned, this was tabled last time. There was direction. There were a couple of staff comments and items that needed to be resolved. The primary one was really site circulation and the sidewalks. Jerry's right. We've been talking a lot about sidewalks with city staff, but that's good, because it's working out. So as a part of that conversation, the solution that we all came to was to provide a sidewalk down the east side of the site, which is shown on this colored site plan. The sidewalk on the west side of the site, which is on Simon Crestway, is already existing, also shown on this site plan. What's not shown on this color site plan is the conversation that we had Thursday, a week and a half ago, where we met with village staff and came up with a solution for a sidewalk on the north side of the site plan. So there will be a sidewalk on the north side of our site, which is the left-hand side of the page here. It's not shown on this site plan, but that's been the direction of staff. That's the conversation that we had in the agreement that we came to, and the solution that we settled on. So there will be a sidewalk on the north side of the site as well. For site circulation on the south side of the path, or the south side of the site, the conversation and recommendation was to add a sidewalk on the north side of the parcel, the Tierney parcel, so it'd be on the south side of Connery Cove. I realize these are a lot of directions, and the site plan is not oriented in such a way that makes it easy to have that conversation. But the sidewalk on the south side of the site would actually be across the road, and it would better tie into the existing sidewalk that's on that side of Connery Cove, directly adjacent to the senior center. So the site will have access and egress on all four sides at the time of construction. The other conversation that we had was really to work with Ed on some discussion about making the west facade of the building, so the side that faces Simon Crestway, a little bit more pedestrian friendly and a little bit more of a residential feel to tie it better into the surrounding neighborhood. And one of the ways that we did that is to add sidewalks off of the 5 walkout units that'll be on that side of the building. So the sidewalks tie directly from the unit porches out to the sidewalk, and we'll accentuate those sidewalks with pedestrian scale lampposts and additional landscaping beds and vegetation. We're also adding a sidewalk at the south end of the west building. So at the right hand of the west building, there's the clubhouse at that end, and that's an outdoor patio that's tied into the clubhouse. We'll be adding a pedestrian walkway directly off of that onto the Simon Crestway sidewalk. The idea there is that as our residents are traversing mainly south down into the rest of the commercial district, they wouldn't necessarily have to walk all the way up past the west building to come in the north side of the west building. They'd be able to access in at the south, the most convenient point, the path of ease. So those are the primary changes that we've made to this since we talked about it the first time around. We had some good conversations with staff. I think they were productive conversations with staff, and I think that we were able to improve the project based on those conversations. And so I'm grateful for those discussions and the time that was allotted to work through those items. I can discuss the PIP in general more. We did do some of that the last time we were here. In general, this is an 82-unit development spread over 3 buildings. We're going to have 150 parking stalls, both underground. Each building will have its own underground parking stall or parking garage, as well as the common parking on the surface. The bedroom sizes range from 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms in terms of the community. It'll be 147 bedrooms altogether. There will be a clubhouse, as I mentioned, on the south end of the west building that will be accessible to all residents. That clubhouse will include community space, an outdoor grilling area underneath the canopy, as well as a fitness area inside and a full kitchen inside the clubhouse that will be accessible to all the residents. This will be a pet-friendly complex, as they all have to be these days. So we'll also be including some dog washing and grooming stations inside the building, which is a popular amenity at the property that we built in Middleton and delivered in 2016. I think that's about all I want to talk about, unless there are specific questions or unless we would like to go through the PIP page by page, which we can do, and we can look at the renderings and the elevations and those sorts of things. It's really at the pleasure of the.
The only other thing I would add is we've analyzed the parking, and it's short in terms of parking stalls if we use our interpretation of our code. What we've been doing, and we're going towards changing our parking recommendations. And Jason
The ordinance, you mean?
The ordinance. Jason's done the analysis using the City of Middleton's parking standards, and using the City of Middleton's parking standards for these types of developments, they exceed it. And so that's why we're, as a staff, we're recommending that you grant the parking exception.
Okay.
How short is it?
12, I believe. Top of my head, Jason.
It's more than that.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
It's more than that, yeah.
Is it?
The village ordinance requires 2 stalls for every unit, and which is quite a bit, and it isn't attuned to the size of the units. I think the Middleton ordinance is an example of one that is attuned to the size of the units, and so I don't know offhand what the difference is. So if we use Middleton's ordinance, the requirement for this combination of units would be 149 spaces, and I think this is providing 150. Again, I'd have to. How many units do you have?
82 by 2 would be 164.
Yeah,
It's in that neighborhood then.
Minus the 150s, 14, not 12. My apologies.
And that includes the 88 spaces?
Yes, it does that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Simon Crestway is also parkable, and there's some additional parking curbside for guests of the units on that side of the building.
Not exclusively.
Not exclusively.
It's public parking.
Right.
Susan?
I'm okay with this, because we're gonna relook at parking. I really would like to have a discussion of some detail about parking needs, because I've been in a lot of them all over, in lots of communities, and it's all over the map. One thing I just wanna make sure is that when there's not enough parking on site, that the parking can't go into the neighborhoods.
No, we don't.
Now, we don't have the same sort of thing that Madison has, where you have to get a permit, and you don't wanna get into all that administrative nightmare, but that's something, if we start running into this, we have to talk about. Because people aren't gonna want cars parking on their street where their houses are from multifamily, because they can't park there, if that should happen. I don't see that here, but it's something for the future, for us to discuss.
I would point out that this site only has the one side of the site, Simon Crestway, where you can park on the street. You can't park on Peaceful Valley. The kind of quasi-public streets internal there are not wide enough to park on, and so it's a bit of a concern. But the overflow, to the extent that there's overflow, is going to flow, I think, further south along Simon Crestway.
I was gonna say, it's a long parking lot, Simon Crestway. You get a lot of parking, lineal parking, and then you're not competing across the street with other multifamily housing. It's all commercial property.
Right.
So over weekends, evenings, there is a safety net, if you will,
Right.
between the clinic, the medical, now the medical offices can say no parking after 6. But pet mark. There's a lot of places that are logical.
I know, it's okay on this site. It's something
Yeah.
to consider in the future.
Yeah.
Elsewhere,
larger
depending on
conversation.
what's around it.
Yeah, totally agreed.
Yeah, actually, just south of here, there's extra parking carved out.
Given the location here, the logical, as Ed's indicating, I think the logical overflow is South Simon Crestway as opposed to a few parcels east into the residential neighborhood. It just, path of least resistance, they're gonna park on Simon Crestway, and again, complementary uses with the commercial spaces. So I think, should there be any overflow issues, they'll be handled very much in close proximity to the site and not in the residential neighborhood.
Anything else?
The only question I had is, and this came up as part of the discussions, the sidewalk that's going to be on the north side of the property, is there sufficient snow removal on, my understanding is it's gonna be street, the sidewalk's gonna be right there, and then we're gonna have to make sure that there's sufficient space for snow removal on this, I guess that would be the south side of the sidewalk. Does that exist right now?
There will be sufficient snow
Okay.
storage, yes.
Okay.
There will be plenty of green space. Absolutely.
With the sidewalk on the north, I'm actually teamed up with this guy here.
My development partner, Jerry Tierney.
So, the solution we came up with was to put a 7-foot sidewalk directly off the curb. And my dad and I were talking about it at length after we met with staff. What we'd like to do to help separate it would be to use, that the standard sidewalk is 5 feet wide. This would be 7 feet. What we'd like to do is put colored concrete for the first 2 feet along the curb, so it still really helps delineate, the sidewalk versus the road.
A little bit more of an urban type style to it. See that in a lot of downtown areas where the apron is colored differently than the sidewalk itself, just to help delineate. But to answer your question, Brian, there's plenty of room for snow storage beyond the
Okay.
sidewalk before you get.
Do we have rights to it? Who owns it? Do we need to get an easement? I think that's really what he's asking.
Yeah, is it in the right of way or is it outside the right of way? Or
Sidewalk's gonna occupy the entire right of way.
Okay.
The right of way is 7 feet at that location.
And we'll just need a snow storage easement then.
We'll, happy to work that detail out, absolutely, as we discussed.
Jerry, was that your comment that you put down for?
No, I just said I supported, that's all.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're good. All right. Any other questions?
The colored concrete, I like that concept. The only thought I have is we don't have that really anywhere else that we've used it.
Well,
So far.
We've used colored concrete and I think the village has in some areas, in other projects.
Yeah.
My thought here was it was discussed at length with everybody that there's gonna be a sidewalk here. And we said, okay, let's figure out how to do it. And that was another lengthy discussion with the staff, all of which were present. And that was the best solution we could come up with. So the colored concrete, the only reason we brought it up, and it adds cost to us, we just thought, hey, it would help delineate and say, nope, this is the sidewalk.
It certainly doesn't have to be done, but.
No, I like the concept. I'm just a little surprised since we haven't done it anywhere else. I don't want to say, are we setting a precedence or anything here, but.
I think that this has been a very unique situation, and to the Tierney's credit and to the developer's credit, they've worked with the village on, wanting to put a sidewalk over there, and so I think it sounds like a good idea, and I wouldn't be concerned about it having any negative impacts moving forward.
The main reason for that is because if you had a 2-foot blank with grass and snow and then try to have a terrace and this way it'll be easy to plow and.
Very cool.
Much
I
simpler.
Definitely appreciate that. I'm a little curious about what happened on the south end and what that discussion was, because I thought when we ended last time, the plan was for the sidewalk to be on this piece of property. So I don't know if I misunderstood or.
I think,
sort of a change
I would
in-
say that, we had 2 pretty lengthy meetings regarding sidewalks. And you guys can jump in, but I think from a planning and a pedestrian path perspective, the thought process was, because these are private, Connery Cove is a private road, it's not gonna negatively impact the pedestrians if we have the sidewalk on the south side as opposed to on this side.
Okay.
Is that?
There is connections on the east side of Connery that would tie into the south side, so there is connectivity.
Okay.
Yeah, we probably spent enough money in the 2 meetings that we could have paid for that wall.
It's been implied that that's happening now, that sidewalk is being built now with this project. So assuming we'll see that in writing, so just to confirm that's happening now.
It'll get done before it's written down.
I think that's part of the resolve to the satisfaction of the village engineer, I think. I noticed you weren't a part of that recommendation, Brian. You might want to write yourself into it.
That's all right. Good.
The only other question I have, and it's just more of a curiosity thing, what sort of rules are you looking at as far as pets?
Pets. Typically, what we do in our residential properties is cats and dogs, not necessarily breed restrictions, but often weight restrictions. Kylie, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it's typically a weight restriction as opposed to a breed restriction.
Yeah, we have just a handful of breed, but it's minimal.
Yeah.
And what sort of weight? 20,
I don't
40,
know,
60?
I don't know what was decided, but we usually differentiate between 30-pound weight or 50-pound weight restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Generally, for like newer properties, we stick to more 50 because they can take it. But like for our older properties with older hardwood flooring, stuff like that, 30s usually are.
Okay.
Or you can have 2 30-pounders.
Wow.
What do you do with the dog food's weight? You gotta sample.
We don't weigh them. We that would, we don't want to get in any trouble with that. So we just sort of take the owner's word for it.
What if you've got a 40-pound cat?
I've seen some of those, Joe.
All right, moving on.
Okay.
Let's,
It's that time,
we need a motion for this, if everybody's good with it.
It's on page 79, the
79.
recommended motion.
I'll move to approve the SIP conditioned upon all staff comments resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, motion by Joe Zitzelberger, second by Susan Springman. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And I did get to sit in on one of those lovely meetings, as you
Yeah.
recall. So
So productive.
it was productive. We got something done. Came to an agreement. All right, last we
Thank you.
have, discuss, well, actually, last for new business. Discuss and take action on specified implementation plan, specific implementation plan and final plat of Golden Ponds addition to Westbridge.
We're not doing that. No, we're not gonna approve either one. Jerry or Matt, are you guys gonna talk?
Jerry, you got
I
it?
just want to say one quick thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
There will be sidewalks and trails. There's gonna be even trails and sidewalks where there's no street. Go ahead, man.
About the dog wash.
You're starting. Oh, wait, that's what the ponds are.
Thanks, Jerry. Matt Schreiner with Becker. Thanks for your time again tonight. I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at. So we continue to work closely with village staff on this. We haven't really made many changes to the final plat compared to the preliminary plat. That's largely the same. The design intent, how we're handling stormwater, how we're making improvements to the stream on the site, how we're taking that existing farmland ditch offline and capping all the phosphorus in that stream, all of that is staying the same. None of that design intent has really changed. We are going to be increasing wetlands on the property by over 250%. Slowing the stream down to improve water quality by reducing erosion, adding flood storage to the site when we're all done with this to make sure there are no impacts to the properties upstream, and we think it'll actually mitigate flooding potentially downstream. I just want to mention it's been nice to work with the Tierneys on this project because it's clear they want to make sure that their projects have a positive impact on the community and on the environment. And it's also been really nice to work with village staff on this project. They've been very responsive to the questions we've had. They get back to us right away. We're continuing to work closely with them to address some grading and utility comments they have, but I think we're really close to coming to resolution on those. Obviously, the Tierneys, it's important to them to have this project continue to move forward, but what's more important to them is that we get this right, that we address all of the village's comments and that they're satisfied with this development and this design. I can answer any questions that you may have.
So with that, Matt, we're gonna work on a couple stormwater and flooding issues and bring it back for final approval at next month's meeting.
We're not acting on it.
Any other comments or questions for Jerry or anyone? So are we just deferring or what are we doing? Till the next meeting?
No action, yeah.
No action? Okay, so we can just move on? Thank you.
Thank you.
And as I think you said, you wanted to make sure with Don, there would not be any sump pumps that would run on a regular basis here. I think, did you say there were gonna be cobwebs on it? 'Cause they were running?
That's the goal.
That's hopefully
These
what's
houses
gonna
are gonna
happen.
be way up. The low, as it turns out, the lowest opening in these houses is it's gonna be up to like 3 feet above Cop Road.
So, yeah. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so number 8 is no longer on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
It's scratched. So the report on Waunakee Westport items, conceptual plan, so we're just giving
You can, but
recommendations to.
their stuff was pulled tonight. They didn't even have a meeting, so all their stuff is getting pushed.
Okay,
The
so our,
Mefford one is, there was there was a death in some of the groups, so they had to take it off.
okay, but numbers 2 through 6, we all discussed tonight
Yeah,
already?
those are done.
Here? We don't have any,
Brian and Chris are gonna come tomorrow night and give all your opinions.
all of them? Perfect. Okay, then we just need one more motion.
So moved, please.
By Susan Springman, second by Joe Zitzelberger to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
That's not the question.